What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so former NBA player, current NBA analyst Charles Barkley has stated that he is not a fan of today's basketball. I mean, he stated that he's been stating that for years, at least for the last 10 plus years. That he's not a fan of the style of play. And a lot of times he will blame the Golden State Warriors for this and teams mimicking the Golden State Warriors style of play. And recently on his CNN show, King Charles, which he co-hosts with Gayle King, he blamed millennials. He said millennials are to blame for why the game is the way it is today. He said, quote, "These millennials have ruined my game. It has become a three-point shooting contest. It's kind of similar to what has happened to the NFL. You're just going to throw the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game. I guarantee you there's a 10 to 15 point difference in scoring from the 70s and 80s to the 2020s in football. It's just the same thing in basketball." Now, I got to take a little offense to this millennial thing because, if I'm not mistaken, the youngest generation now called Generation Z, right? I think that's what they are. I think those are the people born from 2000 onward. Millennials are those born between 82 and 99, I think it is. I'm just outside of that. I was born in 1980, so technically I'm kind of like a borderline elder millennial, close to that, right? Although people tend to associate with me with the baby boomers, which I'm not a part of, really. You know what I'm saying? Baby boomers generation was 1946 to 64. And then you have Generation X, 64 to 82. I'm sort of like on the young spectrum of Generation X, old spectrum of millennials. So I'm like in that sweet spot area. Anyway, because you got people around here used to think I was in my 60s. Seriously, like when I first started doing videos, because, man, you don't talk like somebody young, man. You always talk about all these old players. This is the thing. I understand where Charles Barkley is coming from. You know, young players, young people today, they're more enthralled with shooting and offense. And part of that is the culture. And then part of it is a lot of basketball fans to me today are casuals. But that's the NBA's fault because of the way they marketed the game. They marketed it based on personalities, individual players, not really talking about the game in not really promoting the game of basketball in itself, but individual players. So you have people who are fans of a certain player, like the way the player plays, have some basic NBA knowledge, but that's it. They're not really fans of basketball. They're fans of personalities. The NBA did that. That's your fault. You know what I'm saying? That's TNT's fault to a certain extent. The only one that even does any modicum of analysis on that panel is Kenny Smith. Everybody else is sound bites, right? And it's even worse in ESPN and Fox Sports. But to me, if you really want to blame somebody for all of this, blame, I think his name, Billy Beane? Blame Billy Beane in baseball. Billy Beane changed the way that teams piecemeal, organization piecemeal teams. Billy Beane was the general manager of Oakland Athletics, okay? And for a long period of time, Billy Beane, on a shoestring budget compared to other teams in Major League Baseball, was able to put together, at the very least, competent teams that were at least competing for the playoffs every year for a long period of time. And I think he came up with a book. I forgot the name of the book, but I know he came up with a book. And basically, he detailed how he used, at the time, this thing that was experimental called analytics, which is something we hear all the time now. Analytics. So before, teams often spend a lot of money to get these big time free agents, right? So before, when you were trying to put a championship team together, a lineup, whatever, you would start off with a contact hitter that had some speed. That was a leadoff guy. And then later on, you had the meat of your lineup, the power hitters, right? You have your power hitters. And then toward the latter part of your lineup, you might have a guy who has people that have combination of, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention something. The leadoff hitter uses a good contact hitter, but he also has speed because the object was to get him on base. Usually the contact hitter was good at stealing bases too. Then you have the media lineup, the guys who, were the power hitters. These are the guys that were able to get guys on, from base and get them home. Well, whether or not it's hits, like the great contact hitters, power hitters, one swing, breaks the game open. And then toward the bottom of your rotation, maybe the weaker hitters. But the weaker hitters usually are the best fielders, so it evens out. So that's pretty much what you should see in baseball. But what you started seeing then was, well, the analytics say, we don't need necessarily speed. We need fielding, obviously. That's something that can't be taken out of the equation. But as long as you have good pitching, what we really need are guys who can get on base. If you can get on base at a high percentage, whether it's through walks or whatever, forget how many times you strike out. Forget all these contact hitters. We just need guys that can get on base. So it don't matter if you bat 240 or 230. As long as you hit 45 home runs and you drive in a lot of runs and you can get on base either through walks or what have you, the numbers say that these guys are more valuable than the Tony Gwynns and the Rod Carews. That's what the numbers said. So you started seeing more of that. Then they said, look, it's more valuable to have a great all-around pitching platoon than to, have these pitchers who are great for 3 or 4 or 5 years and then break down to overuse, or 10 years and break down to overuse. It's better just to have a whole game where we can just have our starting pitcher pitch for 6 innings, and then the last few innings, let's bring in our bullpen. Let's have them fresh the whole game. Let's kill them like that, because let's keep the pitching dominant throughout the entire game. And that was the way to go. It changed how teams put together, organizations put together teams in the baseball business, right? Analytics. So basketball, hope I'm not rambling a little bit here, because I'm trying to say a lot of this stuff off the fly. Basketball saw that the three-pointer, numbers-wise, shooting threes was better than going for twos. Yeah, you might only shoot 40% from three land versus 50% from twos, but through the duration of the game, it's more valuable to shoot threes. As long as you have a team that has a lot of great three-point shooters, well, for the most part, unless you have a 30-point lead, for the most part, you can always be in the game. So you start seeing, okay, look, we don't need these big bruising centers who are there to play defense and rebound and be enforcers in the paint. Get these guys out of the game. What we need is just shooters. Let's get some of these, 6'11", 220-pound guys, have them play power forward. But let's stretch the floor out, really. On offense, let's stretch the floor out. So that's what we started seeing in basketball. So it's not the Millenials' fault. You got to blame the NBA. You got to blame the organizations. They did this stuff. I started seeing this stuff back in 2009, 2010. And it just phased out all of these other centers. Shaq got phased out, even though he was getting older. You know, a guy like Bynum got phased out. Over the time, you started seeing Pau Gasol and Ilgauskas shooting threes. The game changed. And I keep trying to tell people, Steph Curry, he gets all this credit, but Steph wasn't the guy that changed the NBA. He became the face of the change, but analytics was going on before Steph even became a superstar. So to me, Charles Barkley don't need to be blaming millennials. Blame the NBA. They did it. They did it. And they've gone way overboard with it, in my opinion. But that's what we do, man. We don't blame or put responsibility on the people who actually do make all the changes or the people in control. We blame the low hanging fruit. You know what I'm saying? So Charles Barkley is blaming the consumer. Yeah, they're irritating as hell, but they're not at fault. They're not at fault, man. They just are. The fans, to me, are just representative of what they've been watching. If they've grown up watching this type of basketball over the past decade, that's what they're going to know. They don't know the 90s unless they go back and sit back and actually watch entire games. They don't know the 2000s. Like, they sit back and watch actual games and do it day after day after day. They know what they grew up watching. And to them, they think this is the best era of basketball. We don't agree with that. So, don't blame millennials. Blame the organizations. Blame the NBA. Blame, the people who say that this is going to be the better brand of basketball. So I disagree with Charles Barkley on that one. Tell me what you guys think.